Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you might be joining us from. I am HR Funk, and welcome to my Combined Arms Training live stream. I have a distinguished panel that is going to be coming on very soon. I am fortunate to have guests of this caliber joining the show this evening. And before we get to that part, I want to do a little bit and give you all some programming notes. First off, as I bring everyone on, I'm going to give them a little bit of an introduction so you know sort of who everyone is. And I mentioned in the announcement video earlier today, Combined Arms Training is an organization that exists to provide armed and unarmed defensive training to individuals, families, and organizations who are interested in receiving that sort of training. So as I start to bring everyone aboard and again, give them their intro, I'm going to give them each a chance to talk about combined arms training, a little bit about what their philosophy is and what they believe they're going to be bringing to the organization. And ultimately, once we've gone around and everyone has had a chance to explain sort of what their part is in the overall scheme of things, then I'm going to start to go over to look at your questions, and I can actually direct your questions to anyone who is or I can direct your questions for any of you who are interested to the appropriate person who can answer those, hopefully. So without any further delay, I'm going to start to bring everyone in. And first up is our duo here. This is Mr. Woody Wilson, who I think probably more so than just about anyone else is responsible for getting combined arms training up and off the ground. Sitting to his left is a gentleman that I've known for many, many years. He was my very first martial arts instructor and someone who I have a great deal of respect for, and that is Sheriff Larry Overholt. He's the former sheriff of Ashland County, Ohio. Next up is Dr. Jan Pritchard. Jan is our ground fighting expert. She is the one that is, and I probably am just going to have to hand this off to you, Jan, because I don't know a lot of your history. I don't have it memorized. I apologize for that. But when I get to that, I'm going to have you fill everyone in on just exactly who you are and what you're bringing to the organization. Okay. Next up is Dr. Lauren Kirshner. Dr. Kirshner is our first aid and critical care expert, which is what he is going to be bringing in. And last but certainly not least is Colonel Joe Shusko, who pioneered and for many years administered the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. And Colonel Shusko has also written a book, which I'm going to hold up for all of you to see, which is called Tie-Ins for Life. I'll try to keep the glare off of that, which when I look at the next line down here, says stories that teach great values and inspire moral action. And I'm going to hand things off to the Colonel to give us one of his tie-ins, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as the show goes on. Colonel?
Thanks, Chief, and for everybody else on the panel here, welcome aboard. And Chief, I'd like to first thank you for allowing us to talk to your viewers about combined arms training and basically let them know what we offer. As the Chief has mentioned, that I was part of the Marine Corps martial arts program for quite a few years. And if you know anything about martial arts or the Marine Corps martial arts program, we have a three-legged stool concept where 1/3 of our training is physical, hands-on, 1/3 is mental, and 1/3 is character. And one of the things that we basically saw to basically do the whole man, whole woman concept is before we put hands on anybody or before we do any training, we always try to start with a tie-in. And a tie-in to me is just pretty much a guiding light that really brings out or recalibrates your moral compass or the values that reside inside your heart. And they reinforce your ethical lifestyle. So in other words, makes you be a good human being. And so I'd like to open up with, if I were to ask folks that are listening, what's the fastest thing to man? Some people would say it was Woody, probably at one time, but I'd like to say the fastest to man or woman is your imagination. So imagine this. Imagine today, every day for the rest of your life, that I was a bank and I was going to deposit into your bank accounts $86,400 today, every day, with one stipulation. If you didn't use that money by midnight, it comes back to me, the bank. What would you do with that? Well, think about it for a moment. It's amazing the answers that I get. Some people say I would buy a house. Some people will say I would donate it to charity. Some people say I won't give it back to the bank. That's for sure, because it's good, honest money, and it's $86,400 every day for the rest of your life. Well, think about this: your God, your family, your church, your life exists 86,400 seconds of life each and every day. What you do with it is your responsibility. And just like the dollar, at midnight, the time goes away. In other words, there are no second chances. After midnight, you don't get a second chance to do something that you didn't do and that you may have a regret for. So if I were to ask you, would you give me the $86,400 back? You'd probably answer no. And so what I'm saying to you as a human being, use that 86,400 seconds wisely, because time is so short and you don't want to have any regrets in your life. And so if there is something that you want to do in your life, make it a priority, get a mentor, set goals to achieve it, and you'll achieve it each and every time. A simple tie-in before we start training. Chief?
Thank you, Colonel. I appreciate that. And I think we're going to go to Woody next to give us a little bit of the background of combined arms training, sort of how the concept was developed, and hopefully where it's going to be going in the future. Woody, you are a 9th degree black belt. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, 9th degree black belt, former law enforcement officer, brings a lot of knowledge and skill to this organization. And Woody, I'm just going to hand it off to you and kind of give us the story of the genesis of combined arms training, please.
Okay, we started our martial arts training back in high school. I went out for wrestling. To me, that's a martial art. When I graduated from high school, just before I went off to college, I started taking Taekwondo, which is a Korean style martial art. I've done that for the last 50 some years. But at that time, I was in my 20s or close to it. Now I'm in my mid to late 70s. I cannot do the things I used to do as a kid. I cannot compete with a young man. So one of my students, who is a Marine, called me one day and said, I just saw this video about the McMAPS, Marine Corps Martial Art Program. He said, do you mind if I contact them? And I said, no, go for it. Hang on. I lost you. Okay. And he called me back. He said, I talked to a gunny down there, and he said I could come visit. And I asked him, I said, Steve, can I go along? So Steve said yes. We went down there, and he met the gunny, and then he introduced us to the director, which was a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Shushko, which is Joe Marine right here on the screen. And he was extremely helpful. He showed us around the facility. But at that time, they were reviewing their training schedules and asked if we could come back. And he said yes. So he gave us a date. We came back, and they were actually training the trainers that went out into the fleet. So the colonel let us sit in on the classes, and I was really extremely impressed. So I came back, and in the meantime, I stopped doing traditional martial arts, because to me, traditional martial arts is for the spectators, just like boxing, wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu. It's primarily for the spectators. They say it's self-defense, but actually it is not. So I got with the colonel, and I got with the sheriff, and I asked them for guidance in helping me develop this. And they both were great to help. And later I asked them, because in the beginning, I did not want to be the one in charge. So later on, I called the sheriff, and I said, I think we need to have somebody in charge. He said, yes. I said, well, who do you want to be in charge? He said, well, you, of course. I said, oh, okay. And I said, would you like to be a part of it? And the sheriff said, well, I thought I was. Okay. So then I called Colonel Shushko, and I said, I didn't tell him about my conversation with the sheriff. I said, I think we need to have one person in charge. And he said, I agree. And I asked him, I said, who do you think it should be? And he said, well, you, of course, which of course shocked me again. And I asked him, would you like to be in charge? And he said, I'm sorry, would you like to be part of it? And he said, yes. So I got, in the meantime, as I'm thinking, my concept is the reason I am here on earth is to protect my family. If I do not protect me, who's going to protect my family? So I have to protect me to be able to protect my family. And that's pretty much everything that our philosophy is. And the sheriff and Colonel Shushko and Dr. Lauren and Dr. Pritchard all have agreed that we want to do that type of training and train civilians to be able to protect themselves and their families. Now, think about this. I spent 2 years in the Navy, and my family was the United States. I got out of the Navy. My family was my wife and children. Then I joined the sheriff department. My family was Holmes County and Stark County, the two sheriff departments I was in. So my family is small, but very large. And to me, that's what I need to do, is to protect my family.
And I know the answer to this, Woody, but just so everyone watching knows, as far as the training that's going to be offered, what all types of training are going to be available to interested persons?
Well, we are going to do unarmed self-defense. But with that, we're going to have knife, club, and groundwork. And then we have a component which is teaching pistols. And we will have at least 3 categories: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And we're going to do the same with rifles and shotguns. Dr. Kirshner is going to be doing trauma medicine, because that's his expertise, and he's been doing that quite a bit. Now, people don't realize this, but he is a retired Army colonel, also a colonel in the Army, a doctor, and he's got a lot of experience with that type of thing. So that's what we're going to be doing. Oh, and then, I'm sorry, Colonel Shushko will be doing the moral and character portion, because I totally agree with him. There's absolutely no way that I ever want to hurt somebody. But if they try to harm me or my family, then I'm forced to. I'm going to try my best to get out of it. That's why we have a portion that is academic. We have books to read, like Left of Bang, When Violence is the Answer. There's all kinds of books by Rory Miller, and quite a few other books. So.
All right. And I think that helps to give a good idea of the organization and what's going to be offered to people that are interested, and also some history on how it came to be. Sheriff, if I can come to you for a second, I know you were, I guess, consulted in this early on and have now joined in. What do you see for combined arms training moving forward, and how do you kind of see it fitting in as a training organization?
How do I see it? I look at the people that are involved in the combined arms training, including this panel, and I'm impressed with the quality of the people in here and what they can bring to the public so far as training is concerned. I want to back up just a little bit. Howard, I was raised on a farm, spent the first 14 years of my life on a 170-acre farm, okay? Farmed with horses, so like kind of dating myself. But finally, my dad got a tractor. But on that farm, we hunted and we fished, and I had neighbors coming out from the city that they would hunt and they would fish. Anyways, and I had a BB gun when I was 7, and I have one when I'm 72. It's a Red Ryder, by the way. So all my life, I've been involved in the shooting aspect of it. And Colonel, you talked a little bit about the moral caliber. My family was extremely religious. My grandfather was an extremely religious man, and my mother and my father, and that kind of set my character. By the way, I wanted to go in the Marines when I retired from school, or when I graduated from school. I wanted to go in the Marines, and I had a heart murmur. I had a rheumatic fever when I was 14 years old, and I had a heart murmur. So I went over to Mansfield and visited the Marine Corps over there. All my friends were Marines, so I wanted to be a Marine. Well, they wouldn't take me. Said, you have a heart murmur, go to the Army. That's what they told me. So I went up and saw them at the Army, and they said, no, we don't want you either. So I went and got married. That was the next best thing. Huh? Anyways, as I progressed along in life, I've always been shooting. I've always had guns, and I've always been shooting. And then I went into law enforcement. And I became, I had 30 years in law enforcement, became the sheriff of Ashland County. Spent the last 8 years of my career in law enforcement as the sheriff of Ashland County. And I've got 57 years in the martial arts and 30 years in law enforcement. Now, during this time in the martial arts, by the way, as Woody said, he started Taekwondo. Actually, I started in Kempo Karate by a man by the name of Bob Mazada, who had received his training in Japan in Kempo while he was in the Army. And I took my first lessons from him. While I was taking lessons from him, I heard of a man by the name of Ilju Kim in Akron, Fair Lawn, really. And he taught Taekwondo. So I went up to see him. And that's how I got involved in this family, which is the same family that Woody's involved in. The Ilju Kim was a 6th degree black belt. While I'm up there, I met a man by the name of George Anderson, who at that time was a 4th degree black belt, and Tong Chu Che, who was a 6th degree or 5th degree black belt at that time. So I went with Ilju Kim for a while, and then I switched over to Tong Chu Che because he opened up a satellite school over in Mansfield. So I trained in Mansfield 2 nights a week. Now I go up to Mr. Che's school, which was in Stowe. Matter of fact, they tore down the building. It was a Capitol building there, and they tore it down a few years ago. I hate to see that because that's where I took my 1st degree black belt. But during my training, as it progressed, then I met this gentleman here, Woody Wilson. I heard about Woody for years and years, you know, what a high caliber black belt he was, and everybody loved him. Anyways, I met Woody, and he talked about starting this combined arms training. And I thought that was really, really a good idea. And what I know what his character is and what mine is and what we can offer the public. So that's kind of where it's at right now.
And real quick, Sheriff, I introduced Woody, and I mentioned he's a 9th degree black belt. I know you hold multiple black belt rankings. Could you just let the people that are watching know some of the rankings that you hold?
Start the highest one. I have a 10th degree black belt in karate. I just got that about 2 years ago. I never thought I'd get that. I thought I'd be dead and buried and have a beard, growing a beard in the grave before I ever got 10th degree black belt. One thing about rank, I never ever asked for it. Okay, just studied and trained, and it was offered to me, and I took it. I have a 9th degree black belt in Tahu Jitsu, which is law enforcement. I'm sure you understand that, Howard. That's control techniques. The problem with control techniques, you're teaching a control technique, and the first thing you know, the guy you're trying to control doesn't like it, and he really turns up the heat. So then you have to go to another level of training. I have a 8th degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. I trained for years and years and years in jiu-jitsu up in Akron with Mr. Anderson. The training was fierce. As a matter of fact, they had, I'm trying to think of his name right now. He came from the Colorado Olympic Center. He could not believe the ballistic, how hard we threw. As a matter of fact, Paul Hennon, you've met Mr. Hennon. He took a fall so hard up there one day, it hurt his shoulder, and he had to give it up. Anyways, that's how I got my training in jiu-jitsu. I have a 6th degree black belt in Chinese martial arts. The way that I got that is Mr. Anderson was giving a demonstration with some of his students with a Chinese instructor there, and he said, "You the only one that's doing kung fu." So then Mr. Anderson got permission to pass out some black belt certificates in Chinese martial arts, and I got a 6th degree in that, and a 3rd degree black belt in judo. Now, folks, I don't like to be thrown. I like to throw, but I don't like to be thrown. Every night that I went to a black belt, I went to a class in jiu-jitsu, we had to throw 100 times and be thrown 100 times. They did a lot of bouncing. Okay. I'm talking about off the mats. So that's the rank that I have right now.
By the way, the sheriff is in charge of, we've combined all of the firearms. So he's in charge of the pistol, rifle, and shotgun training. And he has people under him that are actually the instructors, but he's in charge of our armed portion of combined arms training.
You're not in charge of those guys. Those are really qualified people. They're highly skilled, and I appreciate that. And all that I ever do is just see what they want to do and encourage them. That's about it.
Thank you, Sheriff.
That's the way you get something out of people. You look at what they can do, and you encourage them. You don't slap them around. That was the way when I was sheriff. That's the way I taught my people.
That's the way you taught me when I was in your class.
Well, you were different. I like to pick on you, Howard. But then you come over to class and you beat up on some of my other students.
Dr. Pritchard, I want to hand things off to you. I want to hand things off to you for a second and give you a chance to let everyone know how you got involved with the organization and what all you bring.
Well, I've been in martial arts for over 40 years. So I've had numerous instructors in different styles. And I got in with Mr. Wilson. He saw me teaching ADHD and Asperger's students in a charter school. And I had gone down to their school to give someone a black belt down there so he could have a full-fledged and therapeutic martial arts black belt. And I was telling him a little about my background, and he invited me down to the school. And I told him incidents that I was involved in where I had an ex-husband that threatened to kill us. So we wanted to get trained. So I got involved that way. I wanted to learn how to shoot a gun and just do a different approach to defending myself, because I was used to like the Taekwondo, the Judo, the Wing Chun, and numerous other styles. But I thought this would be an interesting one because I didn't have to throw the high kicks. I didn't have to throw the hard punches the way we were taught. We were taught a little differently down there, which made it more feasible for my size when I started. I got fat, people, sorry. But for my size now and then, it was really easy. It was easy for me to control, and I've learned the different punches, which will help me protect myself. And being in a school system, I have to be able to do stuff so I don't hurt my students, but I can still protect myself in the school because I'm in a pretty challenging system right now.
And where do you see yourself fitting in, or how do you see yourself as a member of Combined Arms Training with the knowledge and the skills that you can pass on to people that are going to be participating in the training?
Well, my focus is more on the ground because in our schools, we do get knocked down a lot. So I want to be able to teach people how to cause spacing so you can breathe and be able to different attacks, either to deflect them, so you can at least loosen them up to get away, or actually, I hate to say this, inflict pain on them if it's a situation where they're trying to kill me. But if I can just get a point where I can make space for me, my framing, be able to get up and breathe and get away so I can step back into what Mr. Wilson's teaching, standing up. So I'm more ground, but I want to be able to get up quickly and go. I don't want to just stay down there and try to muscle them, because the ground's a very challenging place to use skills if you're not accustomed to it.
I completely agree. All right. Moving on to Dr. Kirshner, you are our medical specialist involved with Combined Arms Training. Can you give everyone a little bit of your own history and then some of what you think you bring to the organization?
Sure thing. Thanks, Chief. And thanks all for being here. And so as you mentioned, I was a colonel with I achieved the rank colonel with the Army. I was Army for about 38 years total, about 30 of that as a physician. And through my experiences there, dealing with trauma and what we call mass casualty situations and that type of thing, I think Woody had, based on that, and I think we had some connections with Woody over the years, even though I didn't necessarily know that. Woody reached out to me, and so I'm kind of one of the younger folks of the, at least the newer folks, I should say, of the group. Okay, one of the later additions, but asked if I would mind bringing some of those types of experiences to our group. And so my intent here is to be able to impart for folks some of the things that I learned over my years as a military physician about how to, in a sense, unfortunately, work on the, instead of the left of bang, right of bang, in a sense. So when things unfortunately do go wrong, if you will, how we can, what we could all do in a sense in that response phase of these, unfortunately bad situation, how to, in a sense, save a life. So I will be teaching, hopefully, this urgent trauma care types of situations. Tourniquet use is a big priority there. Being able to teach folks how to be comfortable, and skilled and comfortable in a very short time, how to use tourniquets, how to control bleeding. Bleeding is, acute bleeding in that setting is clearly one of the most lethal situations that we would come up against, in a sense, after some type of incident, be it a gunshot, blast, etc., even car accidents, etc., how to respond to those situations. So kind of bring those long military experiences and incorporate some of this into the civilian community, hopefully.
And when we look at some of the mass casualty events that have taken place across the country, you can see how vital that training could be for anyone, regardless of whether they even participate in some of the actual armed or unarmed self-defense training, just to be able to either keep themselves alive or be able to help someone else that's been injured. Just extremely, extremely critical knowledge that you would be bringing to the group. And I think everybody would agree with that.
Yeah, I think that sums it up very well. We'll teach a range of topics. We've kind of working on fine-tuning the curriculum, and we'll be doing, like I said, tourniquet use, hemostatic wound dressings, these types of things, acute fracture care, things that anyone can really learn in a relatively short period of time with not a few steps, and actually also little supplies, if you will. You don't need to bring a lot of things, if you will, things that you can find readily around you, how to use those to your best advantage. So I think it'd be a good piece, and we'll blend right in.
Well, thank you, Doctor. I appreciate that.
I know, pardon me, I know the Colonel, or Dr. Kirshner, will recommend things for people to purchase. We are not going to sell anything on as Combined Arms Training LLC, but with his experience, he will probably recommend what you might want to carry in your vehicle, what you might want to have around your home, and things of that nature, because of his experience. And I'm sure he's used various things like that from various manufacturers, and he's probably has a good idea which ones would be the best for our civilians.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll cover all that, Woody.
And we'll come to the last member of the panel, Colonel Shesko. If you would give everybody a little bit of an idea of your background, how you got involved. Woody told part of the story, at least, with meeting you and how you came into the fold. But if you would give your own perspective on that, I think everyone would appreciate it.
Okay, I've been doing martial arts since I was a teenager. Just like Woody, martial arts to me is wrestling, boxing. It's anything where you're combative with others. And so I was in the Marine Corps, obviously, for quite a few years, and basically helped with the Marine Corps' martial arts program. So I've always been doing martial arts of some form my entire life. And so, yes, Woody did come down and meet us, and basically was very interested in how we in the Marine Corps did martial arts, because we in the Marine Corps basically did our program that's revolved around protecting and defending. You know, we're not going to go out and kill somebody for somebody slapping us. You know, we may just put a wrist lock on the person and put them on the ground. But it was all about protecting and defending self and all others. And one of the things that we really enjoyed in the military was trying to make good citizens. And the way we were doing that is we were arming them with this thing called the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program, but we were also tailoring their moral compass or their character by saying you don't have to prove anything to anybody as long as you're not protecting or defending yourself or others. You know, just walk away from a problem. So Woody and the team that came down that really liked the way we were doing that, and so I got involved by being that individual to basically advise the group that we should be doing character development every time we do any type of training. And that's how I've been involved with it since day one.
And I know a question that I asked you, I think one of the first conversations we ever had with regard to the tie-ins for life, because I was curious how that impacted the Marine Corps martial arts program, or if it did, or if it made a difference in the Marines you were training and how they received that training and sort of how they comported themselves after that. And I wonder if you would mind telling everyone who's watching what you told me with regard to how that information affected their training.
Well, affected their training quite a bit, not only just in their training, but in their life. Because unfortunately, in our society, we have a lot of individuals that come in the military and not come in the military that don't have a mother and a father. Maybe they just have a single parent. And so, you know, our program was revolved around mentoring. So when you were trained by an individual like a martial arts instructor or martial arts instructor trainer, that individual became a mentor, like a father or mother figure to the individual. And so that individual was there for that trainee 24/7, 365 in regards to developing their skills in martial arts and developing their skills in life. And so it was really great to see these young men and women grow up to be really good patriots and citizens. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they really took on board this thing called the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program.
And that sense of passing on values and sort of a warrior ethos is something that has been part of the martial arts forever. And it's great to see that not necessarily reintegrated, but reemphasized maybe in the Marine Corps martial arts program. I know when I was in the Marine Corps, the current Marine Corps martial arts program didn't exist, but we had other techniques that we were taught and one thing and another, but there was not a context for it or a sort of a moral guide, I guess.
That's right.
And to have that tied back in, I think is extremely important. And I'm glad you took the time to explain that to everyone.
Yeah, and you know, it was really great when we had the opportunity to develop this Mr. Potato Head, as I like to call it. We went all around the world and we brought in a lot of martial artists to the Martial Arts Center of Excellence. And one thing that we did notice, and I've always known, is a lot of martial artists try to just teach the physical aspects and they don't teach the character part. And we were always brought up that there is a three side to every martial arts skill, but a lot of people don't do it. They just want to get the belts and they just want to learn how to fight and how to get on the ground and stuff like that. So you're right. The character part is probably one of the most important parts of the program in the Marine Corps martial arts program. And I hope with the combined arms training too.
Thank you, Colonel. Woody, I'm going to come back to you for a minute. If someone wants to contact Combined Arms Training to discuss having some of the instructors come in and conduct training, how would they go about that?
Well, we have a website, and I think you said you were going to possibly stream it on the. There you go.
There we go.
Right now, we are headquartered in Ohio, but Colonel Shushko is in the process of working with possibly people there in Virginia, which is where he lives. The National, what was that called? Veterans Museum in Columbus, Ohio has contacted him and wanted he or us to come down there and show them what we do. So we're trying to, we're just starting off. All of us have done individual things, but we've just now come together as a group, and that's what we're going to be doing. Hopefully, eventually we will be nationwide, but right now we're limited to Ohio and Virginia.
Okay, and that was one of the things I was going to ask you, that moving forward, this is looking at being potentially all across the country if someone wants to have training conducted there. But for the time being, it's limited essentially to Ohio and Virginia. Is that correct?
Yes. Now, I want to defer to Colonel Shushko again, because when he ran the martial art program, what they did there is a place called Raider Hall in Quantico, Virginia, on the Quantico Marine Base, and they would train the trainers that went out into the Marine Corps throughout the world. And that's kind of what I'd like to do with our organization, is the more people come and the more we can train them, and they can then go out and become assistant instructors, and we can continually branch out. So maybe the colonel might want to mention something about what they do as in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, and Chief, in lieu of that, it's not just, in my personal opinion, it's not just Ohio and Virginia. In other words, if somebody in Maryland or Pennsylvania contacts us and says, hey, it's our desire to get this training, I'm sure we can put a team together to go out there and train. And yes, it would be really nice that once we were doing this training, that we can make assistant instructors of some sort around the country that with sustainment will stay active in the program, and then they can develop it more and do it in the areas that they will go back to after being trained.
Okay, and thank you for that clarification.
Now, shoot, what's the word? The rest of us, not Dr. Pritchard, if you'll notice, we have fairly high foreheads. So we've been around a while. So most of us, except for Dr. Kirshner, are retired. So we can go and travel around the country, and we can go to like Idaho or California or wherever it's needed. I'm sure we can go there and train people.
And again, CombinedArmsTrainingLLC.com is the website for the organization. And if anyone out there is watching and you want to get more information, if you would like to discuss receiving some training, you can go to that website for that information. And this video is going to be on YouTube long after we finish up this evening. So if you want to go back later on, you don't remember what the website is or what have you, it will still be on here scrolling across just like that if you go back and watch the replay. Also, if any of you have questions for anyone, any of my guests here, you can go ahead and put them in the chat feed over here, and I will pass those on to whoever I think is going to be the most appropriate person for it. But obviously, anyone that is here, anybody on the panel, can jump in with information or to answer those questions as well. So if you have questions, go ahead and throw them up there. I will point out the one thing that I usually do, that when the questions really start rolling, sometimes I can't catch every single one of them. So if I miss your question, I apologize. I'm not intentionally ignoring you, but I just can't necessarily always catch every one. If I don't answer one of your questions, just assume that I didn't see it and you can repost it. That's fine. And I'm going to look. We got something from Rabbi here. Attended a BSI seminar. Let's bring this up. Attended a BSI seminar about workplace violence. I really went into identifying personality traits that help to identify high-risk employees. And is that something, I know we've discussed situational awareness. Are we looking at anything in the training program with regard to individuals that might be in a workplace or in anywhere for that matter, that might be a concern, or if we're going to get into any of the left to bang type of issues, anyone that might want to address that?
I got that book Left to Bang. I read it several times, and I'm rereading it again. I've been involved, or we've been involved, the sheriff, myself, Dr. Pritchard, in teaching church security details. So we've gone as far as, we taught one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So that Left to Bang, which if you read the book, it tells you that everybody, no matter where they are, has certain movements. Whatever culture they're from or whatever it is, if they're nervous, they show nervousness. And there are different ways that you can pick out somebody. It doesn't matter what they look like. They could be in a suit and tie and be an extremely violent person. They could have a beard and long hair and not be. So it's not how people look, it's how their body acts that you look for things.
And I know I read that book Left to Bang when I was still police chief, and I reread it when I was working for the armed security company up in Cleveland. And it's one of those things that I think every time you reread that and you think about it a little bit more, you get a little bit more out of it. Colonel Cheska, I'm just curious. I haven't asked you this, but have you ever met the officers that were involved in writing the book Left to Bang? Or are you familiar with them at all? Okay.
No, I did not.
Just curious.
Yep.
Marine Corps being as small as it is, I thought that was a possibility.
That's right.
Well, originally it was the Commandant of the Marine Corps had those two gentlemen write that, and he wanted something, they called it, at that time, they called it the Marine Corps Hunter Program, and they were training Marines and soldiers that were going into Afghanistan and Iraq.
And I'm looking down at, shockingly, the chat feed over here it's not rolling like it usually does. Usually this thing looks like a ticker tape going up the screen over there, and it's not. And I'm not sure if that's a YouTube glitch or if everyone is so riveted by the conversation that we're having so far that they're just not posting a lot of questions. But again, I'll throw that out to any of the viewers who are watching. If you've got questions for anyone on the panel, be sure to post that down there. Okay, got a question from Grumpy Viking Tactical. Combined arms training is I'm not real familiar with One Shepherd training. I've heard of it. I'll bring that up. Combined arms training rather, is an organization that is preparing to present training in armed and unarmed defensive tactics to individuals, families, organizations, or what have you that might be interested in receiving that type of training. I think, if I'm not mistaken, One Shepherd training is a little bit more geared toward military operations, but I could be wrong on that. So I think this is more geared toward the individual, the family, maybe the church security, or other organizations along those lines. Is that a fair representation, Woody?
Yeah, question.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just said the combined arms training is a little bit more geared toward individuals, families, church security, those type of organizations. So is that an accurate representation?
Yes. In the military, they have their students 24/7. But for us, as civilians, they're going to come and take a 1 or 2 day course and learn from us, and hopefully they'll continue their training to do some sustainment training, and we'll have some intermediate courses and some advanced courses, but it's primarily for a civilian that has a job and a family, and they're not like a dedicated martial artist that go 2 or 3 times a week and work out. There's somebody that needs some guidance as far as mentoring from us. They need some guidance as far as moral and values and they'll need some guidance from us from how to defend themselves. Now, a lot of martial artists or martial arts talk about self-defense. They're not designed for self-defense. They're designed for competition. They're designed for spectators to watch and go, ooh, ah, because over the years, I've participated in many, many karate demonstrations, and the spectators come up and say, oh, that's great. And in the back of their mind, I know they're thinking, there's absolutely no way I can do that. They don't realize that the people that are doing that have probably done 5, 10 years of training before they were able to perform that. Well, we can train somebody to defend themselves in about 16 hours. So it doesn't take years and years. It just takes some dedicated practice, some hands-on, some concepts like like the Colonel Shushko's talking about moral character and concepts of that nature, concepts that we can pass on to these students, and then, of course, then they can pass on to their families.
And would you say mindset or attitude also is a huge component?
Oh, definitely. I teach a concealed carry course, Ohio concealed carry course, and I've taught a martial arts class. And like I tell my students, especially in the concealed carry course, I never want to have to shoot somebody, but I will if I'm forced to. If I have to defend my family, I will do that. I will try my best to get out of it. I will try to talk my way out of it. I'll try to get distance from the people that are causing the problems. Everything I can do to avoid harming somebody, but I will if I have to. I'm sorry to say that, but when I was in law enforcement, when I was in the military, it was the same idea. You know, I didn't want to go out and try to cause trouble, but if trouble came to me, I had to handle it.
Well, and sort of tying in with what Dr. Kirshner was saying earlier, you know, the situation could be such that you might have to take steps to defend yourself or defend your family or whatever. But doctor, would you say that then your part of the training could kick in where maybe you've just had to take some action against another individual and now you are stepping in to actually rescue them? And, you know, being somebody of good moral character, you know, you don't want to just necessarily let this person die, even though you've had to take some action to stop them from harming you. If you can take steps to try to sustain them until EMS arrives or what have you, would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And I think that's one of the that moral sense and moral attitudes that we take as this organization goes. I see that through everybody here. You know, I think that is that's a common thread that really binds everybody in the organization. We all have that same attitude, which is sure we want to be able to defend ourselves. We want to be able to defend our families. We would want to defend someone, even if I didn't know them, in a crowd, and if I was forced into those situations. But on the other hand, sure, I also want to be able to assist them, you know, it should that need be there as well, to assist them to keep them alive in a sense, in that circumstance. So this ties right directly in, and that's why I'm really happy to be a part of this. I think it's a piece that we don't want to lose sight of in a sense. And sure, I agree. 100%.
If I could add, is one thing that I keep always constantly saying is we're protecting and defending self and others. Which others? All others. It's just it's a good way to look at life.
Great point, Colonel. And Sheriff Overholt, if I could toss a question to you as a career law enforcement officer, if you would have a situation where you're investigating a a use of force where someone has had to take steps to keep themselves safe, but then they went the extra mile to try to help the individual that they actually had to stop, in that investigative role, I think that would only serve them better off as things move forward, and that was going to be reviewed by prosecutors or what have you. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. I definitely agree with that. Something else, Chief, I want to mention, you were chief. Everything that, are you okay?
Yeah.
Everything that we do in combined arms training, I have a tendency to look at it from a legal standpoint. What are the consequences going to be? And we're going to be sued for doing it. You have a tendency to look at it that way too?
Absolutely. You know, constantly looking at it from the liability standpoint, the legality
Right.
standpoint. Absolutely. I run everything through that filter.
Yeah, me too. And some people don't understand that. Oh, by the way, I grew my heart murmur when I was 24. I pass that on to you. That's why I got married. But anyway, that's one thing that I'm really kind of careful about in who we teach, and if we teach people to go out in other states, other counties to teach, we have to be very careful who we do, who we teach, and what kind of people they are. You agree?
And I do agree. And Dr. Pritchard, looking at that as someone from outside law enforcement, is that something that resonates with you, particularly in the environment where you're working, that should you need to take steps to keep yourself safe, but then you go the extra mile to provide that necessary aid? I think as someone looking from the outside, somebody that's a prospective juror or even a witness, that's only going to serve that person, serve that person's best interest. Would you agree with that?
I do. I think if you're going to go the extreme, you're trying to defend yourself, you should step up afterwards. I've always been taught you have to be able to help people in any way you can, not just injure them. You got to be able to step up, do the right thing. I have students in the same position. They get in fights and we break it up and we help no matter what, if they're hurt or not, or if they caused it, because you have your morals. As Colonel Shesko says, you got to step up with your morals and make sure you do the proper things no matter what.
Yeah, and I think Colonel Shesko, that all ties right back into what you said a couple of minutes ago about you're protecting all people, and the sort of the moral character behind that sense is a big part of what combined arms training is trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. A good friend of mine used to always say, no matter where you go, if a person needs a friend, you're a friend, and you're going to stop and help them in every which way that you possibly can. And sometimes that concept is lost with people. And so I think with us, we're all trying to basically say that we're not attacking, we're just protecting and defending self and all others, which is nice feeling to have.
And I think that's probably a great note to wrap things up on. Does anyone else have anything while we're all together here? Anything for the benefit of those that are watching?
I have a little comment. I noticed that through all this with the gentlemen I've met, they've gained a lot of confidence they share, which I can apply in any situation within the school, in the environments, or anywhere I go. So I think that's a real blessing that they've given to all of us.
All right, and thank you for that. If all of you would stand by for just a minute, I'm going to click you out of the room and wrap things up on the show, but then I'm going to bring you back in just a couple of minutes, if that's okay.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, we are coming up on an hour on the show. Thanks to all of you for joining in. If I missed any questions that you asked, I apologize for that. Trying to juggle the comments over here and questions with the discussion that we're having here is not the easiest thing. Sooner or later, I'll hire myself a call screener to do that kind of thing, and then I'll just sit here and wait for something to flash up in front of me. But I don't have that level of sophistication yet. So again, thanks to everyone. I appreciate you joining in. Thanks for all the support for not only the live show, but also the videos. I hope to see you all soon. And until next time, good shooting and bye-bye for now.